Hey, it's Art from My New Microphone. In this video, I want to discuss buses and how and why you should use them in your mixes. An audio bus, when it comes to mixing, either with a hardware mixer or inside a digital audio workstation, is effectively a signal path that allows us to combine together or sum together a variety of different audio signals. By summing these tracks into one single bus, we can then route all of those tracks more easily within the mix and also process them more easily on a single channel rather than processing each of the individual tracks individually. As far as the language is concerned, the term bus is very fitting for an audio bus. If we liken it to a transit bus, which picks up a variety of passengers and takes them to where they need to go, an audio bus sums together a variety of tracks or audio signals within the mix and takes them where they need to go. Buses can help us tremendously in making larger sessions more organized by grouping similar instruments and vocals together. For example, we could have a lead vocal bus, a background vocal bus, a guitars bus, a drum bus, and even a bass bus in a mix, and bus together the appropriate instruments and vocals to these buses, and then focus our efforts on processing and routing these buses rather than focusing our efforts on each of the individual tracks in the session. Doing so can help us to organize our session and also our workflow by focusing our efforts again on the buses rather than the individual tracks. Of course, there will always be instances where we must visit the individual tracks to solve issues at the individual track level. However, when it comes to general and common processing across instruments and vocals, buses are a key tool to be used. When focusing on and processing the buses within a mix, we can ultimately use fewer plugins throughout the mix session, which will lower our CPU load and even cause less signal degradation to the original audio of the tracks within the mix. We can also get big wins more quickly in the mix and ultimately shape up our mix more effectively by focusing on the buses. I actually have a video going into depth on the topic of top-down mixing versus bottom-up mixing. I'll leave a card to that up here and a link in the description box down below if you're interested in checking that one out. So with that, let's hop into our digital audio workstation and I'll show you how I go about using buses in Logic Pro. All right, here we are inside of Logic Pro to talk about buses. In this session, we will be working on the song The Unending Maze by one of my projects called Blunt Cousin. And we see here on the left-hand side all of our tracks. It's listed here that there are 58 tracks. However, there are 7 auxiliary tracks within this. So really we're working with 51 audio tracks. There are 6 effects returns that I put within the tracks right here for automation purposes within Logic. Different digital audio workstations will work a little bit differently. And then right here I have the mix bus also with a bit of automation going on. So let's get into looking at the buses here. So if I bring the mixer all the way up, we see that we have several buses right here. This is actually my talkback right in this one. So we have buses right here. And then because I wanted to automate a few other buses, I actually brought them into the tracks over here. So we have guitars, rhythm right here around the guitar tracks right here. We have guitar verb or delay right here for opposite side reverb and delay. I actually have a video on that as well. I'll leave a card up here and a link in the description box down below for that. Moving on, we have a vocal delay. These are effects returns right here, and then parallel compression right here. So before we go any further in this Logic session, I just want to talk about semantics and terminology briefly. In the beginning of this video, I defined a bus as a signal path where we could sum together or combine a variety of different audio signals together. So that could look like the actual output of these tracks right here. For example, if we look at the drums all right here, we have them all outputting the actual output of their tracks are being outputted to bus 1. And then if we scroll all the way over here, we see that the drum bus, the input of the drum bus is bus 1. However, we can also send audio out of our buses, not necessarily from the output, but in our sends right here to buses as well. So for example, this drum bus, which has all of the drum tracks being bussed into it, is actually sending to bus 2 here, which is the parallel compression, and also being sent to the drum room, which is effectively an effects return that has a reverb to kind of simulate a real live space. The drums in this record were actually recorded in a very small room, and so I wanted to give the drums a little bit more ambience with this effects return right here. And then this bus 2 right here is being sent to the parallel compression, which is over here. And so we see that this effects return as the input as bus 2, and it is being heavily compressed and then being mixed a little bit underneath the drum bus. So again, the bus refers to the signal path where we're summing together multiple signals, which means that the bus can refer to the actual output of a track and also to the sends of a track. If If we scroll back over here to the drum bus, we can click here and see that these are post pan. In Logic, we can also choose post fader or pre-fader. Post fader means that the level of the send will be dependent on the fader position of the bus or track. And pre-fader means that the send level will be independent of the fader. So just a little bit of semantics and terminology for you there. The term bus often refers to these buses right here. For example, the drum bus, the bass bus, the vocal bus, which are effectively subgroups of instruments, be it the drums, the bass, or the vocals. And these other buses are typically referred to as effects returns. So in this case, we are sending signal from different tracks and buses to these effects returns right here, which are then being affected and being sent to the stereo output or the mix bus in this case. So not to confuse you, but the term bus really refers to the signal path where we can sum different signals together. But in practice, these grouped elements together, such as the drums or the bass or the vocals in this example, are typically referred to as buses, whereas the drum room, the delays, and the master verb, for example, will be defined as auxiliary channels or aux channels or effects returns. And these terms will change from mixer to mixer and digital audio workstation to digital audio workstation. Again, I'm not trying to confuse you, but I just wanted to clarify a little bit of the terminology here. For example, if we go up here and look at auxiliary tracks in Logic, we see that all of our buses and effects returns show up. And then if we look at buses proper, nothing shows up. And so this is very much dependent on my particular workflow in this particular session. However, the terminology can change a little bit depending on what digital audio workstation you happen to be using. So let's go back here and have a look at the variety of different buses we have. So starting with what I would call the typical buses, we have nothing over here. And we have our guitar bus right here, guitar's rhythm, which is bus 3. And we see here that all of these tracks are, the output of all of these tracks are being routed to bus 3, as well as these ones over here. We've already discussed the drum bus over here as being bus 1. The bass is bus 4. If we scroll over here, we are going to see that these two bass tracks right here, which are effectively the low control and the high control, are both being bused to bus 4. And we could go on and on and on with the buses here in this session. We also have vocals right here, which is bus 10. And you'll notice here that I'm actually in a situation routing wise where we have scream vocals bust right here. This is bus 15. Shout vocals right here, bus to 16. We have singing vocals right here with bus 17. Another one here on bus 18. And all of these are being routed to a master vocal bus right here for bus 10. So you can see here that the outputs of all of these different vocal buses are all being outputted properly to bus 10, and bus 10 is the input right here, which is our master vocal bus right here. We are also using effects returns in this mix. So we see here that the drum room is on bus 6, delay right, delay left are 21 and 22 respectively. We have a master reverb right here on bus 25, and you can see here that we are sending to a variety of different buses here just on the sends. So for example, the drums and the drum room are being sent to the parallel compression auxiliary channel or effects return, which is over here. And if we scroll over to these guitars over here, we see that these hard left pan guitars are being sent both to the guitar left reverb, which is actually panned all the way to the right. This is an opposite side reverb, or in this case, I switched it to delay type effect. And then you see here that the hard right pan guitars are being routed to the guitar delay right, which is actually right here, which is panned left, again with the same opposite side delay effect applied to it. So there's a lot going on in this session. We can quickly get a pretty complex routing situation as we go through our mix, but I wanted to show you the routing that went on in terms of busing in this session. So when it comes to the typical buses right here, we have a compressor and an EQ on this drum bus, for example, that is affecting all of the drum tracks themselves. Much like if we go here to the bass, we have an EQ, 2 compressors, a slight reverb, and another EQ that is affecting every one of the bass tracks. Right here on the vocals, we have a multi-band compressor, a reverb, and a channel EQ, which are affecting all of the different vocal tracks within the mix. And if we go to an effects return like the master reverb, for example, we see that bus 25 has a reverb plugin followed by an EQ plugin. And we see here that anything that is bused to bus 25 is being affected by those reverbs. which in this particular mix is only the vocal bus right here. And when we're dealing with an effects return, this reverb will be all the way wet, and there will be no dry signal, as we already have control over the dry signal with this fader, and we will use this fader to only control the wet reverb effect in the mix. So to recap, when we have a bus group, we can apply processing to a whole bunch of different tracks that are routed to that bus. And when we have an effects return, such as the master Vox reverb right here, or the parallel compression right here, we can actually have independent control over the dry original signal, which is unprocessed, and the heavily processed or wet signal on the effects return right here. So that's why busing is important, and I hope that this was helpful. Let's hop out of Logic Pro. All right, so there you have it, using buses in our mix sessions to our advantage. If you found this video informative, I would invite you to hit that like button and also to check out my free mixing cheat sheet in the description box down below. Of course, there are no such thing as cheat codes when it comes to mixing, but this cheat sheet I put together is more of a reference guide to walk you through the step-by-step processes of the mix and to help you make the right mixing decisions at the right time as you go through the mix. So check that out. There's a link in the description box down below. And also I will put up here a few other videos here on the My New Microphone YouTube channel worth checking out. So click on one of these up here, check out the mixing cheat sheet in the description box down below, and I will see you in the next video.